Katerina Jakob watched the German soldiers flee. Streaming from the east, that's what she was seeing. Allied bombers flew above them. She thought they all might die, and then soon there was the silence of all the SS men. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jakob saw red flags flapping in the breeze above the Russian tanks, and she fell upon her knees. And so many different voices in so many different tongues sang the most beautiful song that could ever have been sung. In German, Lithuanian, in Polish and in Dutch, a myriad of melodies has never had been such. In Russian and in Yiddish, Italian and French, emerging from the forests beneath the trench. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht.
Hello and welcome to Revolutionary Socialist Review for July 1st, 2021 with Rainer Shea, Chris Driscoll, and Yamo. Welcome back, Yamo. We missed you last week.
Glad to be back. Glad to be back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back. We missed your we missed your handsome face there for a week, but you know, here we are, and you can regale us with the latest. I hear that a lot has been happening up there in Humboldt County, and what's the city? Eureka? That's the big city up there.
McKinleyville.
Yeah. Eureka. I think Eureka is probably about the only one that anyone will have ever heard of who's outside of California.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's beautiful country. I don't see why we all don't just move there, except that that'd kind of ruin it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Especially if all us zonies moved there.
I feel like a bunch of people, because of the climate crisis, a bunch of people are going to move here.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And,
yeah.
You know, that'll happen because it has to.
Right. My son-in-law's real close friend and his girlfriend, they moved to southern Oregon a couple of years ago. They really love it up there. I wish we could move up there. It's a lot cooler, for one thing. I mean, that's pretty much the same thing, right? Southern Oregon, Northern California.
Yeah. Yeah, I was raised in Paradise, California, and it's about a 40-degree difference from the north central the coast.
Yeah. No wonder you moved over there. Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
A bunch of people did from Paradise when Paradise burnt down.
Yeah.
You know, a bunch of people moved here.
Wow.
It's really cool. You can go online and you can see, you know, about like whatever. There's 45,000 people in that town.
Wow.
And it's been reduced to about 1,500 or something. So
That
it's
is
like,
a significant. That's like what
yeah,
happened to all the European cities at the beginning of the Dark Ages. They all,
right,
they had economic depression, the mother of all economic depressions, followed by the desertion of all the cities. Like Rome shrank from 500,000 people to like 20, 30,000 people or something like that,
right.
as a for instance. Anyway, on with the show. First on our list tonight, and everyone should be aware of this. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about it. The US again bombs nations on the other side of the world in self-defense. Self-defense, yes. That's what they're calling this, self-defense. So anyway, the upshot here is that jumping Joe Biden, jolting Joe Biden, pedophile Joe Biden, as I call him, decided to bomb. I guess he says that these were Iranian militia operations in Syria, and like the northeastern Syria, and in the northwestern Iraq. So once again, Biden bombing a territory that is, or two territories actually, two countries, two sovereign countries, one of which has told the U.S. That it is not welcome in its country, that's Syria, and yet the U.S. keeps troops there, stealing their oil, more piracy, which, Joe Biden's real good at piracy. And Iraq last year the Iraqi parliament asked the U.S. empire to leave, to get the hell out of Iraq. So a small child was murdered in this terrorist act. I think 3 men and a small child were murdered in this. Those are the only ones I've heard of so far that lost their lives. Several injured, and of course a gross violation of international law, a gross violation of the sovereignty of these two nations. The article that I drew a lot of this from was called "U.S. Again Bombs Nations on the Other Side of the World in Self-Defense." It was in the Greanville Post, and it was by Caitlin Johnston, whom I'm sure both of you guys are aware of whom I'm sure you guys are both aware. And it was a pretty good article, so I suggest people read it. I will include the link for it in the description below this video. And so guys, what are your thoughts? And I hear that Rainer has some other stuff to say about Iran as well.
Yeah, over a year ago when the Soleimani killing happened, we, the Peace and Freedom Party of Humboldt County, we organized, or we helped organize, I think it was, anti-war protest on the plaza in Arcata. And it was later revealed that the local police had come there and that they were texting among themselves these messages about beating us up, even though we didn't do anything. So they didn't do anything violent, but they were fantasizing about doing something violent, like saying, "I'll beat those hippies down." Pure tough talk. Mm. So this shows how ingrained the pro-imperialist mindset is within law enforcement, within these kinds of institutions in this country. The language that they used, it was clearly expressing that they had a very vague understanding of what the situation was, what the context was behind the political issue that we were involving ourselves in. They said there's a protest against the war in Iran, which isn't quite accurate. They phrased it kind of incoherent way.
They're jumping the gun here.
Yeah,
I'll beat those effing hippies down. The reason we found out about this is because the Sacramento Bee did an expose on the Eureka Police Department.
Wow.
Like a whole year later, right?
Really? That's interesting.
And the Eureka Police Department, they had leaked like 100 different messages from the Eureka Police Department they were sending each other that include, they were making jokes about sexually assaulting unhoused women. They were making jokes about, so the sergeant of the squad, let's see, what was his name? Reina Sanchez. This guy has been involved in a bunch of police killings, including like a point blank shooting a 20-year-old kid in the back of the head while he was on the ground. And
Wow.
in these leaked messages, he was calling to face shoot, literally quote, face shoot somebody. He had a stockpiled weapons, military weapons at his house. Somebody broke in, stole his weapons, stole all of his armor, and he texted to his squad, face shoot that F word, right?
Yeah.
And so like throughout all the text, you could see who this guy was. He's like a total fascist, right? And so it's like this guy has been involved in so many police killings. They had to get de-escalation training because he shot some lady with a shotgun, right, and killed her. So it's like essentially what it really shows us is that this Proud Boy culture, this fascist law enforcement culture is essentially you have like some of the most dangerous people in the whole country wearing a badge, right?
Exactly.
They're killing people.
I don't know. Did you guys see that poll last year that showed that in some cities in America, more than 80% of the cops sympathize with fascist ideology, with fascist viewpoints?
Yes.
And the average is like 50%. So that gives you an idea of, this is horrendous, but it's nothing unusual.
Right. We're just lucky that somebody leaked these messages, whoever that may be. But, so these officers are on paid leave. They're getting paid, right? And but essentially, where we came into play was during that leaked message, because we worked with the Answer Coalition, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Veterans for Peace were there. So you got like these, these guys who fought in the war. So when they're talking about we're going to beat these effing hippies down, like they're talking about the moms and the kids we had there. They're talking about veterans. They're talking about indigenous people. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like,
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, America is fascist, and like we got to get real about the genuine physical violence and conflict that's heading all of our way. You know what I mean? So
We
the
do.
bombings in Syria.
Self-defense is so important because these will be the forces that they use to attack us. We need to be able to defend ourselves, and just laying down like Gandhi and getting kicked in the teeth is not the answer. It's not rational. It's not human. Human beings don't do that. And it's definitely not a good tactic. I mean, as a non-violence as a specific tactical approach towards specific actions like a specific rally or something like that, yes. But, you know, long run, we have to be able to defend ourselves.
Right.
I do not go with this, you know, with this pacifist stuff at all. It's, I think it's highly damaging. Yeah, we definitely got to be ready for it. Good point.
I mean, that's why they're bombing Syria, is because,
Exactly.
and they're bombing Iraq is because these nations have had it. You know what I mean? And they're organizing together. Multiple Arab nations are, you know, they blame everything. They blame Palestine on Iran. They blame they're like, they'll just call them Iranian-backed militias, and then it gives them the go-ahead to bomb Palestinians,
Right,
bomb Syrians, bomb Iraq.
Yeah, from other things I read, it's kind of doubtful as to whether these were Iranian militia installations.
Sure.
And several civilians who had nothing to do with any military whatsoever were injured, and I think at least some of the people who were killed, obviously the 7-year-old boy who was murdered, or 9-year-old boy, I can't remember which, but
Yeah.
sad story.
With our thing with Qasem Soleimani,
yeah,
right? I mean, Trump bombed the Baghdad International Airport. I mean,
right,
and he killed a bunch of Iraqi officials. This is the government that the U.S. put in place.
exactly.
And he killed a bunch of their officials. And this Iranian general at an international airport is like bombing LAX or something. Like, can you imagine that? Like bombing JFK.
Yeah.
Airport. Like, yeah, that was not a military installation. That was a public space.
No. Well, people are really
United States
outraged.
Good.
People are really outraged about this latest attack, illegal attack, violation of several treaties that the U.S. is signatory to. From what I understand, there have been protests around the country on it. So anyway,
the United States is real good about honoring those treaties. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the trail of broken treaties for sure. Yeah. The United States government or the U.S. state is known for the last 240 some odd years to be one of the all-time worst violators of treaty breakers and violators of international law ever. It is a rogue nation.
Yeah.
And people don't say that enough, but it is a rogue nation, a rogue state. So anyway,
literally.
Any more about that, Rainer?
No.
Okay, next on the list, the left must resolutely oppose the US-led new Cold War on China. Now this comes from a real interesting, is from a magazine I wasn't familiar with up till now, Ebb Magazine, EBB Magazine. I'll include the link from a June 24th article by Carlos Martinez, and I'm familiar with that individual as byline. He's a British writer, writes left kind of commentary. And anyway, this is an in-depth article, and first of all, I recommend everybody to read this article. As I said, we'll have the link in the description below the video. Carlos Martinez provides an overview of the U.S. Cold War against the Soviet Union in this article, this in-depth article. The U.S. pivot to Asia started by the Obama regime. Trump's escalation of that Cold War, hybrid war pivot to Asia, a hybrid war on the people of China, and Biden's latest attacks on China. He points out that the real motivation behind the U.S. war on China's people is to thwart China's economic growth and prosperity and to undermine the Communist Party of China. Actually, to undermine, I think you could legitimately call the pivot to Asia a regime change operation, because that's ultimately what they're hoping for. Although that's like pie in the sky stuff. You'd have to be a Looney Tune to really think you're going to that you're going to take away the government and state that 80 to 90% of the people of China loyally and fiercely defend. That ain't gonna happen. They're gonna have to fight 1.4 billion people to do that. That ain't gonna happen. But they are causing a lot of trouble. They have caused a lot of trouble. The article concludes with a warning to the left in the West, especially in America, that this is an attack on working people globally, on the 21st century socialism, because the author points out that all the revolutions and government left governments coming to power in Latin America, the so-called 21st century socialism, and the multipolarity that China has spearheaded. China defends all those. China is instrumental in helping these people to reach their liberation, to reach their goals. So it's something which benefits all working people. He concludes with these words: those that oppose imperialism must therefore resolutely and consistently oppose the US-led new Cold War in all its manifold forms. To sit on the fence would be to uphold the imperialist status quo.
Yeah, and sitting on the fence is exactly what so many on the left in this country expressly intend to do. Yeah. I remember years ago when I was a different kind of anti-imperialist, in that I wasn't informed on how what we've been told about communist countries are lies. So I assumed that China is a similar actor to Russia economically, and that it's a rising imperialist power, because that's what all facets of the political continuum, including the left, was telling me. It wasn't until I became exposed to Marxism-Leninism that I changed my point of view.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Same.
Amen.
Okay. I was just that was just such an excellent quote that he said there at the end. I just had this conversation with Rick over at Decolonized Buffalo on YouTube. I would encourage you. Sorry, shameless plug. My bad. I encourage anybody to check that out. It's nice to hear from indigenous communists.
Right.
Doing a good job. We just had this conversation about essentially Trotskyists, social democrats, democratic socialists, anarchists, essentially a big chunk of the Western left, particularly the United States, that is just gobbling up this anti-China, like a lot of the xenophobic bigotry, frankly,
Yeah.
about China. Like it's, and they're taking it from like neo-Nazis like Adrian Zenz, the National Endowment for Democracy. Like we know this is the CIA, but for some reason, because I don't know if it's xenophobia or just because of anti-communism that's so rooted here, but for some reason we're believing Nazis. We're listening to, not we, but the U.S. left is believing fascists, like blatant fascists, when it comes to China, and it's pretty freaking ridiculous, that anybody would ever call themselves a leftist, and then just parrot this propaganda by the West. It's sad, frankly.
Well, these are the lines of the CIA and the State Department, and who the billionaire-owned news media, which is all the news media that people hear, see, read, whatever. All of it is just regurgitating these CIA and State Department talking points. If the CIA and the State Department have declared war on China or on Iran or on Syria or on Russia, then that's all you hear, And so I've heard so many friends of mine who, even call themselves communists, so, parrot these lines because it just gets in their head. They're not discerning readers, they're not discerning viewers, and they're just allowing this propaganda to be, osmosis, into their head. It's really a sad situation, and the people just got to wake up and start realizing you cannot trust the U.S. media, period. The mass media, the so-called mainstream, which has nothing to do with the mainstream, but the mainstream media. I don't know why people call it that, mainstream media. It is not mainstream in any way, shape, or form. This is a tiny cabal of a few tens of thousands of billionaires and multimillionaires who, actually, I mean, the number of people that own most of the media that everybody hears, it's a tiny number. It's 20 or 30 billionaires. That's it, and that's who sets the, and they're not really thinking. They're not thinking people. They don't think this shit up. The State Department and the CIA thinks this shit up for them. They just regurgitate it. They just spew it out and run over to the, like the Washington Post right across the Potomac from the CIA. They, they are the CIA's mouthpiece, just as the New York Times is the Wall Street's mouthpiece. These people, they're not thinkers. They're not original, there's no real original thought. They're easily debunked when you get down to comparing whatever limited evidence they present compared to the mountains of evidence we have to present. And yet, rationality and reason don't always hold sway when you're one person out of thousands who is saying this, and everybody out there is just hearing all this garbage from the media. It's sad.
Well, they also got like Radio Free Asia, obviously, is Western media.
Yeah.
Hong Kong Human Rights Network, the World Uyghur Congress.
Right.
I mean, these are these are all direct NED funded organizations. You know what I mean? So it's like, I just, every time I see somebody present about an article about China, it's like almost every single time it's from one of these organizations. Like, you're not connecting the dots. And I feel like it's taking some mental gymnastics for you to not do that, because you certainly have delved deep. You know, the anarchists have certainly tried to delve deep and draw all kinds of connections to vilify Stalin and Mao and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you can't make the connection between the NED and the CIA, or the Hong Kong Human Rights Network, or, you know, World Uyghur Congress. I mean, it's like, yeah, come on, guys. This is like some willful ignorance you got going on.
It really is in a lot of cases, especially with the Social Democrats, the so-called Democratic Socialists, which is just a bullshit term for Social Democrat.
Sure.
Okay. Did you have anything else to say? I didn't want to step on your toes, but I was going to move on otherwise.
Let's do it. But I just had that same conversation with Rick about progressivism, social democracy, democratic socialism. It's like they just switch masks and call it whatever they want whenever it suits their opportunism.
Right. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about Colombia. There's two articles. I had picked out an article called Colombia Still Has No Solutions After 2 months of protests. And this article, it basically, it goes into, well, first of all, the fact that the workers, the working class of Colombia, called a general strike, started on April 28th, and it's still going. It's 2 months later. And then the article goes into basically what's been happening since then. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'll just mention it and tell you, look for it. It'll be, the link will be down here. But we also have a second article that we want to feature tonight. Colombia's Nazistic horror show, America's Near Future. June 26, 2021 article by Rainer Shea. Take it away, Rainer.
This article, I talk about the pretty intricate information I found when it comes to the propaganda campaign that the Colombian ruling class is mounting to try to discredit these protests. Because as you pointed out, the government can't come up with any real solutions to this protest. It can't give up neoliberalism. It can only continue to try to crush the strikes and the protests with terror, with massacres, with torture, with paramilitary assassinations, with bounties even against medical workers surrounding the protests, which is pretty horrific. And it can only try to justify these horrific actions by portraying the protests as the products of a far-reaching conspiracy by what these reactionaries call Castro-Chavismo. They claim that foreign governments are orchestrating these protests somehow in partnership with narco criminals, which is turning the situation on its head, since Colombia is itself a narco government. So they're using these Uribismo propaganda tactics to justify a campaign of extreme police brutality and paramilitary brutality, with the hope that this will prevent a Cuba-esque revolution within Colombia. Because when you really look into the situation in Colombia, the state of the class struggle there, you see that there is a wing of ex-FARC guerrilla members who are rebuilding the guerrilla insurgency effort. They're picking up lots of new members, and they're slowly growing their ranks. The way that they're structured, the approach that they've taken, makes it evident that they have mass support to the extent that they're capable of getting mass support with how small they are. And it's evident that they're going to continue gaining more mass support as the resistance effort continues. And when you look at the history of how socialist revolutions have went down in places like Cuba, you see that what's preceded these types of revolutions has been a combination of mobilization on the part of the masses, such as with a mass strike, along with a vanguard that's ready to take on the task of overthrowing and replacing the capitalist state. So the Colombian government may have used their Plan Colombia anti-guerrilla plan to successfully subdue the vast majority of the guerrillas there. And they may be able to carry out these terror tactics, and neoliberalism may still be in power there, but there is so much class struggle, so many class tensions coming to the surface, also anti-colonial struggles, that the state is increasingly finding itself backed into a corner in the same way that Cuba's dictator Batista was backed into a corner before the communists overthrew him.
Okay. Good points all. Let's see here. Yamo, thoughts?
It's interesting, like everything that we're talking about tonight, we just had this conversation 2 days ago on this other podcast about Batista. This is an indigenous, president that we were talking about Deb Haaland and her voting to fund the Venezuela coup and giving the Nazi Ukraine $400 million. There's all these native people that are saying, Deb Haaland, Secretary of Interior, like, we're winning, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no. They're like, she's our auntie, we love her. And I'm like, we need to be anti-fascist and not have fascist aunties, right? Even if she's native and she's, she looks like us, she's out here voting like a white supremacist imperialist,
right?
And killing indigenous people. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? They're not indigenous because they're outside of the U.S. borders? Like what? But anyways, Colombia. It's a narco state. If you look, I saw a map of like where all the cocaine's coming from, and it included that one boat that was busted by JP Morgan Chase, that owned by JP Morgan Chase, and it was like hundreds of tons of cocaine on this boat brought in from. It was like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago at the most. Where did it come from? Colombia, right?
Right.
So, there's a map. There's people have done like mapping where the drug running is coming from. Since over the last 20 years, it used to come from Bolivia, right? Bolivia, they killed Che there. They hung him from a helicopter and flew him over Bolivia to scare everybody from becoming socialist. And what happened? Lo and behold, they're becoming socialists, right?
Right.
So it's like, that map is incredible because it's like there's nothing coming from Venezuela, Bolivia, like these other places. It's like Colombia. Like you can see, this is like a huge dark spot on this map that they put together. So, oh my God, I hope so bad. I've worked with people like a Jamu Baraka and stuff who lives in Colombia, and I've been watching him for years now.
Jamu lives in Baraka? In Colombia?
Yeah.
No, they used to live in DC.
Back
when I was there, but that was a long time ago. That was like more than a decade ago. So
he was living there in 2016. He came back to the States to run for president or whatever.
Yeah. For the
So I don't
Green
know
Party.
exactly if he's living there right now, but that's, you know, certainly where he was. And
Uh-huh.
I've certainly
No, I
watching
didn't
him.
know that about him. I mean, I know these gets around. He's an international man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He
I
founded
did.
the U.S. Human Rights Network, I believe.
Yeah,
He was one of the founders or something.
right.
Anyways, I'm just happy. Please, Colombia, please.
Right.
Please. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know. But here you go, Colombia helicopters shooting from the crowd into the crowd, like, you know what I mean? The old
Yeah.
this fascist libertarian, throwing from the helicopter thing.
Right.
Oh man, you were seeing
This article that I mentioned earlier, the Colombia still has no solutions after 2 months of protests. They had some really interesting statistics, like 80 people have been murdered by the police and the military since the strike began. Hundreds have been, injured. Another one was, how they use those tear gas canisters. More than 80 people have had their eyes damaged by those canisters, because the pigs aim it straight at people's eyes.
Yeah. Big respect and shout out to my sister there, Vanessa Dundon, Susie. She got her eye put out by a tear gas canister at Standing Rock back in 2016. It was the end of 2016.
Well, and at least there's a victory in Standing Rock now. With the what was that company called? That bastardly company that was trying to push through the pipeline there has totally pulled out. So they've totally abandoned the pipeline project that the people of that nation, of the Lakota Nation, were defending, along with various friends from outside the nation come as well. Okay.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that, because we've been battling the Jordan Cove LNG project up here.
Yeah.
And we've shut it down like 5 or 6 times. And it keeps coming back.
Right.
It's like the zombie pipeline, right? So with anything with America, and that's what I was telling people from the Laguna Pueblo and about Deb Holland, and oh, she can do this for us, she can do that for us. I'm like, everything is temporary under the dictatorship of the bourgeois. Everything is temporary under the colonial occupation of the United States. Mm-hmm. Everything we've ever fought for, the 40-hour work week, 8-year-old kids working in coal mines, all of that stuff is
all of it is conditional. And we've seen, I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen so much of it rolled back, right. So defeat after defeat and rollback after rollback of the rights that working class people in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s fought and sometimes died for. Okay, next on the list. U.S. empire's decline foreshadows a revolution in America, June 29th, by Rainer Shea.
I've been reading this book called Imperial Hubris, Why the West is Losing the War on Terror, from 2004. And its author concludes that the U.S. military has been severely misjudging what they need to do to stop terrorism. They've been acting like the Islamic terrorists are just doing this irrationally, but there is irrational motivation behind why bin Laden was able to orchestrate attacks, behind why ISIS, all these groups today are able to are motivated to orchestrate all these attacks. It's because they're responding in what what they see as proportionately to provocations from U.S. NATO imperialism, and this arrogant mindset within U.S. Defense. I remember that word, defense institutions towards the terrorism threat as actually perpetuating this terrorism threat. It's the reason why the U.S. hasn't been able to really pin down Afghanistan, why the Taliban has been able to garner so much strategically useful support from the locals there. Just a couple of years ago, I remember there was this leak of documents pertaining to U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, where a huge amount of corruption was revealed. The U.S. has looked the other way as all of this atrocious stuff has gone down there at the behest of U.S. officials. And it's because of these provocations, these wanton killings of civilians, these violations of Afghanistan sovereignty, that the Taliban has been able to get the locals to help them, has been able to continue this insurgency against U.S. occupation. So what does this mean for our task as revolutionaries in the core of global imperialism, the United States? Well, as I mentioned in the previous couple, I think, podcast episodes, this sociologist Temitope Oriola has predicted a couple months ago that an armed anti-police insurgency is going to begin sometime soon within the United States, and it's going to be spearheaded by the members of these colonized communities who've had enough of an increasingly militarized occupation of their neighborhoods by increasingly militarized, army-equipped police departments. He says these attacks are going to start as explosives and shooting attacks against the sites and symbols of law enforcement, and then this could snowball into a larger insurgency effort where the government is having to fight off this insurgency. Where Oriola says he predicts that even if some of the leaders of this insurgency get killed, the fighting is still going to stop, going to continue, because the conditions have prompted the masses within these most disenfranchised and impoverished communities to rise up against this tyrannical occupation. And when this fight against colonial tyranny begins, perhaps we're going to see the U.S. military replicate its mistakes abroad. Perhaps the hubris that the U.S. empire has demonstrated abroad is going to be its undoing at home.
Yeah. I expect this. I've expected it for quite some time, but I really expect it to erupt soon. This is getting past the level of intolerability, and yeah. There's a lot of people in the Black community with military experience. They were in the Marines, the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and they know how to fight. They know the tactics. They know the enemy's tactics because they were trained in the enemy's tactics. The carnage that will come out of it is sad, no doubt. But at some point, people have to rise up and defend themselves. Self-defense is a human right. It's a sacred human right.
It actually
So,
qualifies as self-defense if you're actually like doing it on your own land or in the country that you're, how in the hell is bombing Syria and Iraq self-defense? When they were supposed to be gone a year ago from Iraq. But yeah, I think I want to frame this in a way so because like, Black and brown communities are going to start an insurgency. Like that's not how it's going to happen. How it's going to happen is that they will starve us out and put us in such a desperate situation that we will have no choice. And that's always been the case, right?
yeah.
So like, for instance, in Northern California or in California in general, like I said, I keep having these keep talking about a lot of the same things because this is what everybody needs to be talking about. But for instance, in California, climate crisis going fucking crazy, right? Excuse me. Sorry.
You're allowed to say fucking on YouTube.
Okay.
Nobody's stopping you.
I mean, my hometown got burnt down. The place I was born got burnt down. Santa Rosa got burnt down. My mom's had to evacuate like 3 times in the last 2 years from either fires or floods in like, on the Russian River where my ancestral homeland and all this, right?
Right.
So like what's gonna happen here in California for sure, absolutely no question that this is not gonna happen. All of Southern California's water and Las Vegas, right, comes from Northern California, right? In Northern California, especially North Valley, is just laden with fascist militias, crazy like cult-like churches that are bigoted and racist as hell. And there's like the whole big ag, like the biggest funding, like federal funding and state funding in the state goes to these big ag conservatives up north, right? So at multiple locations during that water resource, before we even get to Sacramento, you know what I mean? Like there's multiple places where it'd be incredibly easy to completely shut off all the water to Southern California. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which would put millions of people at risk, right? So it's like the fight, this revolution that we're talking about, that is absolutely coming. It's inevitable. Nobody can avoid it. Will have fascists seizing that water, attempting to seize that water if essentially they haven't already, really. And the only way we're going to prevent many people from dying from this is to prepare for a conflict over that water, which means that we need to be talking to the Shasta peoples, Wintu peoples, you know what I'm talking about. All of the indigenous nations. There's 105 indigenous nations in California. I've been to the tribal water summits. You know what I'm saying? We have to get in line with them and organize to occupy that and refuse by whatever means to stop them from killing like millions of people, to be real.
Yeah.
And like that will be the fight. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, we won't really have a choice but to become willing to take the steps necessary to stop these people from dying. You know what I'm saying? So it won't be like we just like created an insurgency because we just hate America so much. It'll be like, yo, you're threatening to murder millions of people again, after the millions of Muslims, after the million people in South America, after Korea, you know what I'm saying? Vietnam, Laos, and obviously indigenous peoples and like enslaving 20 million Africans. Again, they're going to attempt to essentially create the worst genocide in California since the gold rush.
Yeah.
And this will be the thing. So like, no matter who you are, if you're listening, you're in California, I don't care if you're in San Diego or LA, wherever you're at, like you need to get real concerned about Northern California because it could happen that quick. And if we're not ready for it when it comes, that is not a scenario in which we want to be winging it or trying to train people to deal with a situation like that on the fly. That's not going to work out well.
Water has become increasingly more and more a major issue, a major motivator for wars, major motivator for civil strife. I remember reading during Obama's bombing of Libya. Libya, people think of Libya as oil, right? One of the, like, I don't know, the third or fourth largest cache of oil in the world. Libya also has underground water, an aquifer that is the largest single body of underground water in the world. That was another major motivator for the theft of Libya by Europe and the American empire in 2011, when Obama stole Libya from the Libyan people.
Yeah, he did.
It's becoming an increasingly big issue that we really need to keep an eye on. Okay, anything more on that?
I mean, just much respect to the Libyan people, man.
Yeah.
They assassinated Gaddafi. You know what I'm saying? Like, what people need to put in perspective about the Middle East is that Iraq was the Ba'athist socialist, Syria is the Ba'athist socialist, Libya was socialist, Afghanistan was the most liberal democracy in the Middle East. And, it's the United States that went in there and funded crazy, radical religious fanatics.
Right.
And destroyed these countries that had better health services and human services for their people than we've ever had in the United States. Well, maybe pretty much. I mean, like,
living in Libya under the Gaddafi government was like a worker's paradise. There's no doubt. I mean, people had when you got married, you got a free house from the state. Everybody had subsidized gasoline for their cars. Everybody had subsidized education from womb to tomb. They could go anywhere in the world to get a free education, any school they could get into. The list just goes on and on of the benefits of the green socialism, the Arab socialism of Gaddafi and of the Green Revolution, as they called it, in Libya. And it is no wonder at all to all of those of us who know the evil nature of the American empire. It's no surprise at all that they destroyed Libya, that they're trying to destroy Syria and have already destroyed a lot of it, that they destroyed Iraq, that they destroyed that they really thirsting to destroy Iran, but really don't have the capacity to do so. That they're trying to destroy China, that they've been trying for 70 years to destroy Cuba. It's no surprise at all to any of us that this is what they do. Look at what they did to Yugoslavia. The Clinton regime and the Blair regime in the UK got together and said, hey, let's go destroy Yugoslavia. Let's disassemble it. Let's take it apart. We'll use, ethnic people in Yugoslavia had gotten along for like 100 years. All the ethnic shit that had, gone on in the medieval times and so forth had subsided. Serbians married Croats and Croats married Bosnians, and Catholics married Orthodox, and Orthodox married Muslims. And all it took was the CIA going in there, starting in the mid 80s, and stirring up the ethnic hatreds. And they didn't do it just with propaganda. They did it with murders. They'd go and they'd murder a Muslim down the street, and then they'd spread the word. You know, oh, the Orthodox Serbians are out murdering Muslims. You know, and the next thing you know, everybody's mistrusting one another. Well, fuck yeah, what, you know, it's kind of logical in a way that, you know, if you think, geez, I got to watch out for those Serbians, they're murdering anybody who's a Muslim, you know, or I got to watch out for those Croats, they're murdering anybody who's a Serb. That's the way they did it. That's the way the CIA did that. Great book by Michael Parenti, by the way, The Killing of a Nation, that I recommend to everybody, on literally the Clinton's murder of Yugoslavia, his ravaging and theft of Yugoslavia. And why? Because Yugoslavia was a fairly successful example of worker participation in socialism. That's why. Simple. They didn't like that. Anyway, let's see.
I feel like I hate to interject. I mean, I don't need to do it. I do it all the time.
Do it.
But I'll do it again.
Go for it.
I feel like I have an obligation as somebody who ran as a delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016.
Yeah.
To, like, especially when we're talking about Michael Parenti, is to quote him in saying that, hey, you know, I had to break with Bernie Sanders, right? Because of his support for the so-called humanitarian war that shelled Yugoslavia with uranium munitions, giving them the highest cancer rates in Europe.
Right.
And he goes on to say that, you know, it wasn't just Sanders, but it's like, you know, Trotskyists, anarchists, many people got in line behind the U.S. narrative to justify, you know, the horrific things the United States did as a response.
That's what they do.
And then you got Bernie. Everything that's going, Bernie's been behind it all. I'm not behind it like he's the orchestrator of it, but all the Iran, Syrian sanctions, you know what I'm saying? Like every step of the way, you know, Bernie's been out here telling the settlers in colonialism, hey, well, you know, you guys, you know, we should at least have healthcare and education, you know, but the CIA plays an important role, and you know, the drones have done good things, and you know, Assad's a vicious dictator, and you know, Gaddafi's got to go. You know what I mean? Bernie's been there every step of the way, and like I didn't know this because I just wasn't really like a politic head at the time. Yeah. You know, it's just some old grandpa dude shows up like, "Hey kids, let's do socialism." Like, yes. Oh, you don't actually mean it, you old Zionist bastard.
Yeah, you can't be a socialist and be an imperialist pig at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bernie. Sorry, Bernie.
Hard way. I think a bunch of people learned the hard way in 2016.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. On Monday, Russia's President Vladimir Putin and China's President Xi Jinping announced the extension of the 2001 Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation Treaty. Xi commented that the treaty has been a successful experience of close cooperation between both countries. It represents a new type of international relations oriented towards peace and development, Xi stressed. For his part, Putin stated that the GNF treaty evidences that Russia and China are determined to turn their common border into a strip of peace. This bilateral policy will help stabilize international geopolitics at a time when the United States breaks with the instruments of control to control the arms race between countries. So, thoughts, guys?
Oh, well, I remember a few years ago when Trump was sabotaging the nuclear deal with Russia. And when this came at the same time as the Russiagate hysteria, and this Russiagate hysteria, it was backed by the entirety of the liberal media in partnership with the neocons. So there's this bipartisan effort within the United States to push forth with these Cold War escalations by vilifying Trump bizarrely as a Russian puppet, which was encouraging him to continue to escalate these Cold War escalations. So now you have Biden, who has been elected amid a race that was very much influenced by the intelligence agencies. These agencies and their partnered media outlets throughout this last year or so have been claiming that Russia, China, and Iran have been interfering in the election, that they surely could have reelected Trump if they wanted to. That seems to be their implication. So even though Trump wasn't reelected, you better be scared, because they're out to interfere with our democracy, and they're also trying to blame the Capitol Hill riot on Russia, China, and Iran to an extent. They've been putting out these reports about supposed hacking. It all relates to this effort to manufacture consent for a new nuclear arms race with Washington's rival superpowers, which I think as of 2018, that arms race reached a point that was actually more dangerous than the arms race had been at any point in the previous Cold War. Because the difference now is there's not an effort towards detente. Is that how you say the word?
Détente.
Détente. There's not even an effort towards détente on the Washington side. It's just mindless Cold War escalations. And we've seen this with Biden's accelerated funding of the belligerent Nazi regime in Ukraine, which has been aggressing against Russia.
Yeah. Yamo, any thoughts? China, Russia, reaffirm bilateral alliance?
I think many things. I guess I'll start by saying the AOC, virtually the whole squad, I believe, Deb Haaland, all voted to give Trump's 2019 war budget the go-ahead. So it's $700 something billion, right? But even more terrifying, right, is that it also in the bill, it allowed Trump to deploy low-yield nuclear weapons in the field, right? So I mean, really, when these, then hopefully, I mean, I hope not, but I mean, the chances of like nuclear conflicts going on. Look at Fallujah, right?
Yeah.
The United States. I mean, even as evil as the Nazis were, they didn't drop the atomic bomb. It was the United States, right? So we know that they are a conscienceless, wicked, regime pulling the strings of this fascist state. And you know what I'm saying? And when this stuff starts to occur, when low yield nuclear weapons start flying, who are we going to have to thank for that? These so-called democratic socialists and progressives in the Democratic Party that got right in line and voted to give, like, the most blatant fascist president of our time the ability to do this. We're just lucky. I guess we're just lucky that Trump, didn't take advantage of that while he had the opportunity. But the next worst fascist that the Republicans managed to get elected, you know what I mean, is going to have all this stuff at his fingertips, and we're only going to have the Democrats to thank.
Right.
Because they're the ones who are supposed to be the opposition, and they're not.
Yep. Social fascists and liberal fascists. And
I just, on an encouraging note, I know I always feel like I'm like the Debbie Downer and like, doom and gloom and all this. But on a positive note, look at what's going on in Russia, like the Chinese-Russian relationship. Look what's going on. You just recently had 70% of people in Russia say that they want to return to the Soviet Union. That's a lot of people. And then you have like 13, Putin got unseated like 13 seats in the parliament by the communist, communist party there.
Communist Party of the Federation of Russia.
Right.
Or Communist Party of the Russian Federation.
There we go. So, I mean,
Yep.
I don't know the stuff that I hear about the Communist Party of the Federation of Russia from the West is that, it's not real communism, it's not real socialism, but these are also the same people that are saying, Vietnam's not real socialism, Laos isn't real socialism. So it's like,
right.
I don't really
well,
know.
we have a lot of victories lately. It's starting to look like the upcoming election in Chile, that the Communist Party of Chile candidate is going to win that. So it's more and more we've got good positive victories to point to. Okay, let's see. Last and finally, from Rainer Shea, American Apocalypse, when an empire eats itself. Take it away, Rainer.
In 2018, there was this write-up from a futurist technology thinker. I don't remember his name. I mentioned his name in the article, who described a interesting experience he had where he was invited to speak at a conference for hedge fund individuals on the so-called future of technology. And these hedge fund billionaires, he said, were asking him all of these wild questions, like, do you think New Zealand or Alaska will be better after the apocalypse happens? Which do you think will be better for me to move to? They were asking him things like, how will I control my security forces after the doomsday happens and money becomes worthless? They shared their thoughts on things like disciplinary shock collars for the guards and food stashes that only the billionaires know the combination to. So you have these billionaires who are outright saying that they expect for capitalism to implode in on itself so much that at a certain point they're going to have to create makeshift feudal fortresses with what they're describing is a hostage situation where they're planning to take these formerly paid guards as slaves. So let's see how sustainable that arrangement is. And they're expecting to have to get these guards to defend them against unruly mobs of angry, impoverished people who've just been screwed over by capitalism. And so you have these billionaires imagining these insane apocalyptic scenarios. And at the same time, you have the US government engineering all of these internal destabilization tactics. What they're doing with the militarization of the police, with the proliferation of CIA propaganda covertly within U.S. media, with the surveillance state, with the border militarization, with all of these efforts to import America's foreign intervention tactics into U.S. borders, is an effort to preemptively disable the forces of class struggle for when the capitalist crisis reaches such a dire point. In order for these billionaires to be able to defend from these unruly mobs, the capitalist state is going to have to make it so that these mobs are not coherently organized into some kind of people's army that can easily overthrow the capitalist structure. And make no mistake, after capitalism has collapsed that much, surely their power structure is going to be pretty easy to overthrow by a hypothetical people's army. So they're trying to divide the opposition. They're trying to divide the communist movement with propaganda. They're trying to preemptively suppress the class struggle. They're trying to intimidate us and suppress us in all of these ways, using their intervention tactics from abroad to make it so that when the class struggle really comes to a head, the billionaires will be the ones who come out on top. And we'll see how realistic this is.
Yeah. Right. Yamo, thoughts?
I mean, it just takes me back to what we were talking about earlier with this water fight here. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know, California is the 6th largest economy in the world, right? The majority of the bourgeoisie here are, you would think that it's like Hollywood or whatever, you would think that it's them. But in reality, these huge, big ag farmed, subsidized people up here up north, the ones that will be the ones essentially to seize all this water and try and kill everybody, essentially. Anybody that doesn't go along with the program, like, you don't need a shock collar when somebody's dying of thirst and you're going to have access to all the water. You know what I mean? So it's like, everything that you're calling them insane apocalyptic scenarios, right? Which it may seem that way right now, but I mean, essentially, like, millions of people combating a very small group of fascists. And to be real, probably the federal government will come and step in and seize that water resource themselves. You know what I'm saying? But they may try and use like deputized fascist militias, so they don't have to take those kind of measures. You know what I'm saying? But either way, that is an incredibly apocalyptic scenario. You know what I mean? It's threatening to starve out Las Vegas and all of Southern California is like, whoa, you know what I mean? It's the most populated state in the country, right? So,
yeah.
No. I mean, everybody that we know, everybody that you talk to, like, we should really be saying, like, we're talking about how to engage in revolution as communist, electoral politics, blah, 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 this, that. Like, we need to figure out how to make our own medicine, how to catch rainwater, clothes, food. Like, we need to figure out how to be sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't build a people's army if we can't feed a people's army. If we can't clothe a people's army and give them medicine, you know what I mean, to be able to engage in this combat that these fascists are going to make us engage in. We don't want to do this. It's never been a matter of wanting to commit violence. It's always been a matter of responding to violence that's being committed on us. And that's true of people of color, indigenous people of third world, communists. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
self-defense. That's why self-defense is so important. And the other thing to think about strategically, is an army marches on its stomach. Logistics. Wars are won or lost on logistics. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard that old poem about "For the Want of a Nail." Have you ever heard that? So the guy didn't have a nail to put the horseshoe in his horse, on his horse, and because of that he didn't get the, and then they didn't get the, you know, and it's all basically a poem about logistics and war, basically.
Yeah.
But it's very true. Anyone who's studied military tactics, military strategy, military theory will tell you the same thing. Logistics is of primary importance. Your ragtag band of guerrilla fighters will fall very quickly without logistics.
Yeah.
And without the support of the people, obviously, as Che Guevara said often, and as Mao says often in his military writings as well. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that, or on anything else that you want to bring up before we bring this hour and a half to a close, or almost hour and a half?
I think because of our experience here locally with like trying to recruit members. Yeah, I mean, like Rainer's articles, like I commend you. Like you're really, I don't really know anybody else out there that's putting out as much material as regularly as you are. That's on point.
Prolific. That's what I always say. Rainer is prolific.
Absolutely. But the problem that we've ran into multiple times, right, is that when we're talking about like if we're actually talking about this conflict that's coming up and we're talking about logistics, right? One thing you got to be careful about that we've experienced directly is when you're doing recruiting, right, is like you're talking about, we're looking to make sure our logistics are correct, that people have food, clothes. Like I said, if you can't do these things for people's army, they're not going to be able to do nothing, right? But a lot of people, or at least a few people, several people that we've ran into, don't care about, whatever, figuring out how to make the kind of medicine we're going to need, or figure out how to produce the food we need. All they care about is the conflict and this violence fetishism or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, I think it's really important. And I just give word of caution to all communists that are organizing, like, I would even refer you to the Antifa handbook. You know what I mean? You can get this zine offline, but you need to watch out for provocateurs and instigators. You know what I'm saying? Check out indigenous action networks, accomplices, not allies. Read these zines, because, that's essentially what we've ran into is, people that we've just had people come in that are like, oh yeah, I'm all about just taking out the fascists and blah, 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 blah. And and then we're like, okay, well, we got to go through, this process of recruiting and follow all this Marxist theory. And we're like, have you read this? And it's like, no. Have you read this? Well, no. I mean, I just heard that Che Guevara killed a bunch of people, and Mao was just, and they're wiping out all these guys, and I just want to see all the white people die, or whatever these people were saying. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? He's talking about nukes, and you know what I mean? You got to watch out. The real people you should be going after, predominantly, frankly, are moms, women of color, people that know how to keep people alive.
Yeah,
we ain't gonna have important. We don't need the pompous, big, cis guy who's such a badass and is gonna kill everybody. That dude is not gonna be helpful. He's just gonna get all of his comrades killed or do something, put us in a bad situation. We need people that can keep our comrades alive, keep them
practical
fed.
people.
Right. And like, so watch out for that. Watch out for that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of us are pissed off, especially, you know, people of color from people that have been in like oppressed peoples. We're pissed off. Like, and it's a righteous anger. But you know, the point of this is to make our lives better, make everyone's life better. The point is not to, you know, just like look forward to the horrors of combat, you know, and all these things. Like, it's not going to be fun. We're going to watch our friends die. It's going to be horrible. And anybody who takes that lightly or makes light of it or acts like they can't wait to be in the worst, it'll be the worst experience of our entire lives. Yes, we'll come out the other end if we do it right with a better world. But it is going to be the worst experience of our entire lives. And anybody that's going into that giddy and looking forward to it, you keep an eye on them and try and, whatever's going on in there, try and get them to snap out of that.
Right.
Because
the only guarantee there is that it'll be even worse if you don't stand up and defend yourselves.
That's true.
Because the bourgeoisie's violence is coming at you, whether you like it or not. This isn't a choice on our part.
No.
This isn't something any sane human being would choose for themselves. This is a logical, scientific appraisal of what's coming at us.
Right. So if you're not reading the theory, you know, like Thomas Sankara said, a soldier without any education is a potential criminal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I'm just saying, you know, watch out for that, because we're gonna have to go through this either way. But like, anybody that's looking forward to this in that way is not really, like, that's not a healthy way to think about it. You know,
They're not quite sane, if that's their perspective.
Right.
But you're also not quite sane if you don't take any of this shit that's coming at us seriously.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the great advantages of being a human being is the ability to anticipate, the ability to gather information, put it all together, and make some logical deductions from that information that will help you stand up against the slings and arrows they will throw at you. They are throwing at you.
Oh, I've already been, yeah. I'm just saying, if somebody comes in your spot and starts saying, "Hey, I got a magnet of Pol Pot on my wall," you know what I'm saying? Like, yo.
No, we don't want that.
I mean, we've been through these things. It's a lived experience, so just beware.
Beware.
In your recruiting process.
Good advice, Yama. Good advice. Okay, Rainer, final thoughts before we depart?
Oh, well, the final quote within my article is from The Art of War, where the Art of War book says every battle is the outcome of every battle is decided before it is fought. By this he meant the side with the best logistics is the one that wins. You can know this already. This is ironically a message that the U.S. military has been brushing under the rug throughout these last 20 years.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan and so on.
Earlier,
Absolutely.
Earlier you said something about the U.S. being super delusional about like the fall of the Chinese government, or like, you know, something like that. It was like 6-8 months ago that like the U.S. representatives tried to strike a deal with Vietnam to oppose China, and I'm just like, you know,
and Vietnam said,
yes. I was like, I know you guys just throw anything against the wall and see what sticks, but damn, that was a doozy.
Well, there were tensions between Vietnam. I mean, of course, there was a war between Vietnam China in 1979. So there's some residual bad feeling, but they pretty much worked that all through. Just about 2 weeks ago, there was information out. The Chinese foreign minister, Yang, I think his name is, visited Vietnam to hold discussions, hold talks on a number of different things, hold a summit basically. And you know, they reinforce the same thing, this reaffirmation of their intention to get along. That yes, they still do have some territorial disputes, but they specifically said in that meeting that they were going to rely on international law and international structures that are set up to adjudicate that. But that Vietnam and China have full intentions of being friends and friendly and allies. So, yeah, I mean, it's like that. I'm trying to remember the name of that movie. That movie with Danny DeVito was it was like a kind of a fictional version of the Teamsters fights and all that, and so it's kind of like the main guy was like who was it? Trying to remember, some famous actor played the Jimmy Hoffa kind of role, but Danny DeVito is saying to some FBI cop, "You think I'm giving up?" And he says the name of the fictitious version of Hoffa. "You think I'm giving up Hoffa? Jimmy Hoffa?" He says, "I'll never give up Jimmy Hoffa." It was great. But that's kind of like the same attitude with when the Vietnamese were dealing with the idiots from America, you know, with the American imperialists trying to get them to, you know, stand against China. "You think I'm giving up China?" Yeah, not on your life.
Yeah. My last thing I want to say is that, like, you know, because like I say, I feel like I'm always sort of like always being the pessimist and blah 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 blah. But you know, my real hopes are, you know, to one day see the reformation of the Communist International. You know what I mean? And I feel like when this takes place, you know, it'll be the signal that the signal that, like, you know, everything that we've hoped and dreamed for is so possible.
Yeah,
it's so possible, and we're probably closer now than we've ever. Certainly, obviously,
I have an even bigger dream than that. My
Yeah.
dream is that someday we will see the formation of the global communist government. But
yeah,
we'll see.
mean,
It'll take a lot of people coming to the realization that nationalism is a phase we've gone through. It had its day. It had its importance for people gaining their liberation from imperialism and so forth. But nationalism is something we need to ultimately move beyond. You know, that's what the whole idea behind Marxist Leninist internationalism is.
Right.
It's to move beyond the nationalism, to move towards creating one world for all the world's people. And the only way you're going to do that is to create a communist world. That's the only possibility. It's the only possibility to save the world from imperialist destruction, which the imperialists are busy trying to do every day. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you again. Go ahead.
I hope, you know, certainly all communists, that's what we should be, you know, that's the dream, you know. But at this point, you know, I'm really like Ho Chi Minh, You know what I mean? Our secret weapon is nationalism, right? Like nationalism has such a negative connotation because it's all about who's expressing it. You got a bunch of white supremacists from Europe like genociding all the people and setting up their nation nationalism. Like, of course, everybody in the West has like this negative connotation.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, nationalism in itself is not inherently evil. You know what I'm saying? It's a something that we're going like 573 indigenous nations been fighting for, you know, national liberation, sovereignty. So it's like, you know, anybody who's already a communist is watching this all knows this stuff. But I do want to mention that, like,
Yeah.
we got to go through nationalism to get to what's beyond. You know what I'm saying? And it's not, you know, we're certainly
nations must all feel as though they have security, as though they have that, as though they're being able to get the benefits from their land, their territory, as though they have a stake in becoming part of the community of humanity, becoming part of the communist global state, and hopefully that state withering away someday. But that is our dream as communists, as Marxist-Leninists. So there you have it. And with that, I'm gonna call it a night. And Yamo, as always, thank you very much for your stupendous contribution to this discussion. Rainer, keep them great articles coming. Prolific, as always. Great articles, thought-provoking. And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your contributions to this show. And until next week, I guess we'll be bidding everybody a sweet adieu. So long until then.